coming up from the Northeast Live Studios in Guwahati. Northeast Tonight with Wasbir Hussain.
Hello and welcome to Northeast Tonight, the show that decodes the region. If Trinamool Congress under Dr. Mukul Sangma cannot win a sizable number of seats, most political pundits are saying Meghalaya will have pretty much the same people and the same parties forming the next government. But of course, that is for the voters to decide. But I want my esteemed panelists to tell me tonight what they think are the main issues bothering the common man or the general electorate in Meghalaya. Will the people vote for candidates or parties? Has political ideology taken a backseat again with around 20 or more candidates in the fray already switching parties? So what does this mean? To discuss the people's aspirations as well as political equations, I have with me a career diplomat, Mr. Rudi Warjri, who was India's ambassador to Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and many other places, besides holding several other key assignments. Joining me is Miss Patricia Mukhim, well-known political commentator and editor of the Shillong Times. With me as well is Dr. Sumarbin Umdor, who is professor of economics at the Northeastern Hill University. And at the studios with me in Guwahati, I have business leader, Mr. Larsing Ming. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Northeast Tonight. I'd like first to start with you, Mr. Rudi Warjri. This is your debut appearance in Northeast Tonight, 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛. That's why I'd like to give the honor to Mr. Rudi Warjri by going to him first. Mr. Rudi Warjri, you have seen it all. You have been monitoring things very, very closely. What's going on? Everybody is saying that it could be anybody could have the last laugh. Nobody knows who is going to have the last laugh in Meghalaya this time around. What do you think?
Okay, first of all, Wasbir, I'd like to thank you for inviting me into this show. This is the first time I'm appearing on Northeast Live. Now,
you're most welcome. Thank you.
Well, it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. But in the way I understand it is that whatever happens, if the change doesn't take place, my sense is that there's a desire for a change, no matter what happens. If ever unavoidably the same people come back to power, I think there'll be more despondency among the people, especially those who are keen observers, those who think for the future of the state. Because the last government has been so scam-tainted in all respect, that the desire for a change is very, very, very strong, especially among the youth. So this is how I look at it.
Now, Mr. Warjri, let's forget what the political parties are saying. They are saying a lot of things. But what do you think? What is the sense you are getting? What is uppermost in the mind of the common voter? What is uppermost in the mind of the common voter? What do you think they are going to look at while voting on the 27th?
Well, that's what I said. As far as those people who are really analyzing the situation properly, and I'm not talking about those people who are just getting excited and emotional by the elections and get carried away by all the euphoria that is taking place because of so many that's happening, be it the music, be it the money power of different political parties. I'm talking about particularly the youth who are educated, there is a strong desire for a change, no matter who comes.
Right.
And if the new faces come, it's even better. That is what the way I understand it.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Warjri. Let me go to Miss Patricia Mukhim, the editor of Shillong Times, well-known commentator. Miss Patricia Mukhim, when Mr. Rudi Warjri says that there is a desire for change in the people, but we have 5 major political parties: the NPP, UDP, BJP. All 3 have tested power together for the last 5 years. Then there is the TMC and the Congress. Now, the TMC and the Congress, the TMC is a fledgling party, but the fact that it may be a fledgling party, but the fact that Dr. Mukul Sangma along with 11 others have switched sides, because these are people who already have a considerable support base among the people. So therefore, forget about it whether it's a new party or an old party. Now, TMC says that no, P.A. Sangma once contested under the banner of TMC, so we are not a new party, we are a very old party. Now, Congress, we know under what circumstances the Congress is fighting the polls. Their numbers have reduced to 0 at one point in the assembly. Now, do you think there may be a desire for change, but do you think something new? Do you think a new political equation is going to emerge? What do you think?
What I think doesn't matter much, Wasbir, because in Meghalaya there's a huge urban-rural divide. The urban thinking voter is all for change because they analyze the issues, they have seen this government working, they have seen the power scam, they have seen the assembly dome scam, they've seen the rice scam. I mean, you name it, there is some scam or the other. Maybe there are others that we haven't even unearthed as yet. So one would think that there would be an anti-incumbency, and that people would vote wholeheartedly for a new government. But I've been traveling the length and breadth of Khasi Jaintia Hills, and I see that, people don't vote on issues, number one. Number two, they don't also vote for political parties. There's no such thing as a political ideology. People now are accepting the BJP also. From today's, that road show in Police Bazaar, you can see that people have forgotten the whole idea of BJP being this, being that, being anti-minority, being anti-Christian. It doesn't seem to be the talking point anymore. So you're totally confused. But as somebody who watches elections very closely, I think it is very sad, but a fact that the old regime will return. They have been, lambasting each other right, left, and center, but there's no other alternative because the TMC might at best get about 12 seats. Now, who do they team up with? Because the Congress also doesn't seem to gel very well with the TMC. And, the only cohesive group you can think of are these old partners. They have been against each other, but I think finally they come together because then for them it becomes more important to be in power.
Ms. Patricia Mukhim, you're saying that TMC does not gel much with the Congress. There's no question of the TMC aligning with the BJP. But do you think that the UDP is taboo for the TMC? You think the UDP is not a potential ally of the TMC?
It depends how many seats the UDP also gets. No, if TMC is going to get about 12, UDP about 10, that makes it about 28. That is possible also. You never know in Meghalaya politics. You remember once we had a government that was formed by a draw of lots. That was 1978.
Draw of lots. 1978.
Yeah.
1978. A government in Meghalaya was formed by a draw of lots. That is an interesting bit of information. I just skipped my mind and now I'm recollecting that. Thank you, Comfort, for reminding me about that draw of lots, 1978. I'll come back to you. Let me take the opening remarks of, from Professor Sumarbin Umdor, professor in the Department of Economics at the Northeastern Hill University. Professor Umdor, you are also making your first appearance on Northeast Tonight, and I hope to see you more and more. But let's come straight to the point. Meghalaya once again seems to be heading for some kind of a fractured verdict. BJP contesting 60 seats, the NPP contesting 57 seats, the Trinamool contesting 56 seats, the UDP contesting a lot of seats, 40 plus seats, the Congress also contesting a lot of seats. So what's going on? What are your predictions? And then we'll come to the issues concerned in the next round of discussions. What is your prediction? What is going to happen?
Thank you, Mr. Wasbir, for having me in your show. I think before I answer your question, I think, for the benefit of the viewers, we should look at the background and the context in which we're discussing. If you look at this election in Meghalaya, we may not be that colorful, but we are very songful, our election.
Songful, yes.
And you come to Meghalaya, you'll find very songful, and you'll find that there are a lot of songs belting out, not at the campaign trail, not only at the party level, but even at the individual candidate level. So that is something very unique if you keenly watching the elections. But on a serious note, I see two distinct features of this election, if you permit me. The first is that if you look at the political parties that are taking part in this election, you can actually group them into three different groupings. One is the national party, with a pan-India presence. And there you have the muscular BJP that is riding on the image and popularity of our Prime Minister and his performance of the government. And then you have a very weakened, INC, Indian National Congress, that is actually now, which have lost all their old faces, and that is one group. The other group is your, again, national party, but with a regional presence. And here you have the TMC that is, having a head start with Mukhim Sangma and his other 11 colleagues have joined, that have joined TMC. And then you have the NPP, which, has in the last 5 years built up this very strong war chest for this campaign, and that is how they are able to attract a lot of the candidates to their party. So that is a third group, a second grouping. And in the third grouping, you have the regional parties, the UDP, the PDF, and you have a dark horse, I would say, the Voice of People's Party, that in the last few days, if you look at the social media, there's gaining a lot of traction. And so these are the three groupings. And the other distinctive features of this election, if you permit me, is about the issue. In your promos, you have talked about this, and the other panelists have talked about this, that in Meghalaya, we never fight election on the basis of ideologies. There's no caste arithmetic, for us, so it's basically personality-wise. But in this election, the issues are also coming up front. And, we'll be speaking more on that. But then some of the issues are on corruption, yes, on unemployment, the lack of development, the border issues. But a very, important development is that the parties are going all out to woo the voters through freebies and cash transfer. So this is also, which is very unique, which has never happened in Meghalaya. And I think we'll see a lot of this happening in the other northeastern states. Parties are, in a power deficit state like Meghalaya, parties are saying that some parties are saying that we'll give 400 units of free electricity to certain category of consumers. So that is new. But then coming back to the question that you've asked, I think if you look at in terms of the Venn diagram, you'll see that there can be a lot of permutation and combination. But what will happen is that the only two parties that I see not coming together is the BJP and the Trinamool Congress. Other than that, you can have any combination with the NPP and the regional party in the common area.
We'll take it forward, Professor Umdor. We'll take it forward. That's a yes. Only two parties which cannot combine is the TMC and the BJP. But I have a counter question to that. I'm coming to you, Larsing, in a minute. But Ms. Patricia Mukhim, what if members of either of the parties change colors overnight? That is also quite possible.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that those from the TMC may break up. You never know. I mean, in Meghalaya, anything is possible. There are no sacred cows. So anything is possible. But I want to make this point that the Congress, which was reduced to 0 in the assembly, was able to set up 60 candidates.
That is interesting.
Quite remarkable. That's
Yes.
quite remarkable. Only the Congress and the BJP have been able to set up 60 candidates each.
So
Now, whether
it's a-
they win or lose is a different matter.
That is a very interesting point. We will just deliberate on all of this. Let me turn to my guest in the studio, Larsing Ming. Larsing Ming is a well-known entrepreneur. He doesn't need any introduction. He's a football enthusiast. He had earlier the Shillong Lajong Football Club. It doesn't need much of an introduction to an audience in the northeast or other parts of the country. Larsing, you are not a political person, but you are a keen observer of the political situation. Now, before we talk about the issues, when the voter in Meghalaya goes out to vote on 27th, what is your guess? What could be working in their mind when they go to press that button in the electronic voting machine?
Yes, Wasbir. So I think as Patricia has already mentioned, which is very apparent as far as Meghalaya is concerned, is that the divide between the urban voters and the rural voters. So the aspirations and the sensitivities of the urban constituencies is quite different from the aspirations and the things that matter in the rural areas. So in that sense, there'll be a multitude of different subjects which will actually influence this election. But one, I think, very defining perspective in this particular election could be, I'm not a statistician, but my guess may not be too wrong, we could be seeing perhaps an election with the youngest maximum number of youth population voting. And there may be a lot of first-time voters this time. Because if you look at the demographics of Meghalaya, I think 70% odd are below the age of 35, very much like the rest of the country. So that means that there is a huge number of people who have not impacted elections in the past that are actually going to come into play here. And this is where, the 2nd of March may end up throwing a lot of surprises. Yeah. So this is one aspect, and of course, as already mentioned, there are the issues that there are in the rural areas. The issues are very different. A lot of people, there's a lot of illiteracy there. So also the poverty levels are very high. So the aspirations of the voters there are very immediate. So any gratification which is instant or seasonal can play a big role in politics there. Unlike, of course, the rural areas, as was mentioned earlier.
Right.
Urban areas.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm coming to you, Mr. Rudi Warjri, but let's take a quick 50-second commercial break, and then I'll come to Mr. Rudi Warjri and continue this conversation. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
মথি উলিওৱা ঘিৰ দৰে সুস্বাদু আৰু স্বাস্থ্যসন্মত পতঞ্জলি গাই গৰুৰ দেশী ঘি খাওক নিজৰ পৰিয়ালক ভেজালকৰণৰ বিহৰ পৰা ৰক্ষা কৰক
BJP promises to empower the youth of Meghalaya by generating 3.5 lakh self-employment opportunities and by giving ₹1,000 monthly allowance to all the unemployed graduates for a year. This 27th February, vote for a stronger BJP for a stronger Meghalaya.
Canara Bank announces special deposit offer for 100 days at 7.75% per annum. Apply online or visit your nearest Canara Bank branch.
হাৰ্ট কোলেষ্ট্ৰল মেদবহুলতা আৰু মধুমেহ ৰোগীৰ বাবে সৰ্বশ্ৰেষ্ঠ হৈছে পতঞ্জলি ফিজিক্যালি ৰিফাইন্ড ৰাইচ ব্ৰেন অইল আৰু কচ্চি ঘানি বিশুদ্ধ সৰিয়হ তেল
Welcome back. Mr. Rudi Warjri, the youth population, who is going to hold the key? Do you think, as Larsing Ming said, that youth population voting pattern, the voting behavior of the youth will be very important, because he's saying that 70% of the voters in Meghalaya, an estimated 70% could be below the age of 35. Do Do you think youth hold the key? And you made the point that Meghalaya needs a change. Now, what kind of a change is it going to be? Do you think there will be political realignments? People might change parties after the elections. Do you think there will be some kind of a cocktail after the elections?
Before I reply to your question, I just want to say that I couldn't hear 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛𝗙 and Professor Umdor properly. So, maybe, so I shouldn't, I hope I don't have to repeat what they've said. Now, coming to your question, definitely, in fact, Ming also has mentioned about the youth population voting in sizable number this time. And that is very critical. And the way I have said it, it's because talking to them and from the campaign, I could see there is a desire that new faces should come irrespective of political parties. Number one. Number two, if you are asking about the permutations which will take place or combinations which will take place, the very fact that especially the regional parties where the ideology is very, very unstable, if I must use the word, or even it's not very strong, unlike the BJP or even the Congress to some extent. So it's possible that you will get all sorts of combinations and even more parties, even more groups, and even more political orientation. So what exactly will come out of these elections? That anything can happen. And don't forget that it is said that politics is the art of the possible, and I think it'll be even more this time because of the very kind of new situations. There are very several groups which are contesting as independents, so they can join hands with anybody. They are free to do so, and I think so. You will expect more surprises out of it. But coming back to, I'd like to persist and emphasize on that point about the youth part of it, that there is definitely a desire for a new faces in the assembly.
Professor,
irrespective of political parties.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point. Has been once again reinforced by Mr. Rudi Warjri. What Larsing said, that the youth, voting behavior of the youth could turn the tables to any direction actually. And Mr. Warjri has also made this very interesting point that independence might tilt the balance here and there because they are people who can join any party. But Professor Umdor, what do you make of the massive support, if I may use the word, because people in large numbers coming out to listen to the Prime Minister, the road show, this was absolutely unprecedented, the entire Shillong. And if you look at Garo Hills, that was also, it was a huge rally by the Prime Minister, because BJP finding 60 candidates in a state like Meghalaya, a lot of people would have thought that it was something which was impossible a few years ago. And from 2 seats, and BJP is quite confident that they are going to get a sizable number of seats. Professor Umdor, let's show the visuals of the Prime Minister's roadshow. Yes, yes, Umdor. Yes.
See, I mean, this is known to everyone that our Prime Minister is a very popular figure. Not only nationally but internationally. So he's definitely someone who can attract a large crowd, and especially in a place like Shillong, where you have a very sizable non-tribal population. So it's expected that when the Prime Minister comes, someone as popular as our Prime Minister, that you will have this crowd that will be there. And this will definitely have a big impact on the vote shares of the BJP. And we all know that the BJP will certainly, the vote shares will increase and they will come up with more numbers. But to add to what Rudi has just said just now, about new faces, there's a very interesting experiment that is going on in our state with one of the new entrants to the political arena, the Voice of People Party. What they're trying to do is that this is a party that has not only introduced new faces, but they're basically fighting the election not on the basis of money power. They're using a lot of social media, and if you look at the social media in the last few days, they're not basically crowdfunding. So based on they're just making an appeal, an honest appeal to the electorate to give them a chance, and you'll find that they may have an impact, a big impact on the vote shares of the regional party, because they're fighting for the same vote shares, and this may affect the regional parties. Whether they win or not, that's a big question. But this may affect the performance of the regional party, established regional party like the UDP. So this is something that is very interesting.
Right, Mr. Warjri, you were trying to say something, Mr. Warjri. Yes.
No, there's no doubt. Of course, unprecedented turnout regarding the roadshow of the Prime Minister, but the route they have taken, I must say, is largely a non-tribal route. Okay, so I'm not surprised by that very much. So I expected that it would be like that to me.
Now, Miss Patricia Mukhim, see, the Prime Minister had a rally in Nagaland before. After that rally, he had a rally in Nagaland. Also, there was a huge crowd. There was a huge crowd in that Nagaland rally. And today, the NEDA convener, Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, was in Maushinram. There was a huge rally, people dancing. Will it be fair to say that this was this people who came out on the streets are only non-tribals? Do you think that is going to be too simplistic an assessment? A lot of people might say that.
I think so, because if you look at Garo Hills, the large number of people turning out for the rally are Garos. And contrary to what we want to believe, the reality is that there is a general acceptance of the BJP in Meghalaya today, whether we like it or not. So, and then we are going into the polls on two very emotional things, One is dystopia and the other is expectation. There's been a lot of dystopia in the last 5 years when the scam started blowing one after another. But there's also a lot of expectation. And when Mr. Modi comes and he makes this huge call, a very personal call to the people, saying if the BJP comes, A, B, C is what it will bring. I think it just resonates with people who are already very dystopic, who feel a sense of helplessness, who feel a sense of frustration. And Ming mentioned the demographics. I can understand that there are a lot of young voters, but the point is that we have to question now what sort of ideology do these young voters believe in? Are they willing to see change, or are they just engaged in mindless kind of activities? Everywhere you go, you see these young people all dancing to the tune of this party or that party. Finally, who they will vote for is anybody's guess. So I don't know. And there's also this hope that the Voice of the People's Party will at least get some seats and prove itself. Now, the point is that they have set up only 18 candidates. We don't know how many of those are going to come in, and if they will be able to bring that kind of change, because you need a substantial number to be able to bring the change.
Right. Larsing, I'm coming to you, but yes, Professor Umdor, I'm also getting a reaction from Mr. Warjri. Yes, Professor Umdor, you wanted to say something? Yes.
Just to add to what 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛𝗘 said, the issue that our Prime Minister brought out today about our, the political leadership using the public fund as an ATM, I think that is something that really resonates with the electorate here in the state. Because we've had corruption in the state. It's not that, corruption is, this just happened in the last few years. But this blatant sort of corruption that, in your face sort of thing that we can do whatever we want and you will get away with it. And come election, we'll use some part of that money back, by the voters. That is something that I think as a state, as we are really fed up this time. And so therefore, what the Prime Minister said is really something that has been there in our heart. That is, he has spoken actually what most of us have in our heart.
Right.
So the Prime Minister also spoke about dynasty. And I think in Meghalaya that is becoming quite real. You have 2 or 3 families wanting to capture all the power.
Yes, that is what I was exactly wanting to ask Mr. Rudi Warjri. Let me ask him this question. Yes, Kongpat, that is the point I was asking. Mr. Warjri, the Prime Minister, without naming anybody, said that dynastic politics has to end in Meghalaya. Obviously, he is targeting the Sangmas. He is targeting the Sangmas. Maybe
Which Sangmas? There are 2 different groups of Sangmas.
That is why I said in plural, Kongpat. So because I don't know, because he did not name anybody. So he is targeting the dynastic politics. Now, a lot of people will say, if the BJP was so unhappy with the MDA government led by Conrad Sangma, why did the BJP stay on with the government for 5 years? That is also a question a lot of people are asking. What is your take?
Yes.
Hello, are you addressing the question to me?
Yes, yes.
Hello, are you addressing the question to me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay. Now, okay. I suppose it's an open secret that the Prime Minister meant very well. He may have targeted only the Sangmas, but it's also something to do with the way the Congress party has been following the dynastic politics from the past. I think that was the root of it. But coming to Meghalaya, of course, he targeted the Sangma. But I think more than that is, other than the Sangmas also, is this trend even in Khasi Hills or in Jainte Hills about certain families putting so many candidates, which will lead to Meghalaya being ruled by an oligarchy of families. This is the biggest danger. So I should say a compliment to the Prime Minister that it has raised the point about dynastic politics in Meghalaya also.
No, Larsing, as someone who has been dealing with young people, closely dealing with young people, Larsing, what do you think? I want to know what the youth, 70%, you said that 70% of the voters are below the age of 35. Do you think they're bothered about about this political dynamics? They must be having some basic things. They want jobs, they want livelihoods, they want better infrastructure, they want better air connectivity. The railway line is just not there. Even today, there's the inner line permit issue. There's coal mining, illegal coal mining still going on. Do you think the youth will be bothered with these things more than finding out who is going to become the new chief minister or who is going to form the new government?
Yeah, first of all, I think what I said was 70% of the population is below the age of 35. Not necessarily the voting population, but our population in general. So that may translate to about 50%, 45%. That I wouldn't know. So that's just.
Let's forget the figures.
Yeah.
What do you think the youths? What will be going on in their mind? What could be going on in their mind? What are the issues they want?
See, as far as youth are concerned, at least the millennials, or let's say the first-time voters, 18 to 35, 18 to 25, 25 to 35, is that these kids have been brought up in the digital age. So the level of awareness, the level of development that this country has seen in the last 20 years vis-a-vis what we have seen in the 90s and 80s are two different Indias.
And they will contrast it with the development in Meghalaya.
Well, to a great degree, we are living in an era where we can see what is happening in the entire country. So in that sense, I do believe that there is a huge chunk of the population that would also have these aspirations of wanting to see growth happen in the state and to see a different sort of a state and and also hope that our state can also grow in the way that some of these more progressive states in the rest of the country are growing. Having said that, we in Meghalaya have a serious issue as far as illiteracy is concerned, as far as education is concerned. And at the end of the day, politics or the political dispensation that we elect are essentially the mirror of the electorate. So until we empower the electorate, until we invest into education and improve the consciousness and the education levels of the electorate, we are not going to see, engagement of politics at the levels that we would be desiring.
Excellent point that Larsing has made. I'd like to develop on this little bit, but after this very, very short break. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
ঘৰেই মোৰ পৰিয়াল আৰু মোৰ প্ৰতিজ্ঞা হ'ল প্ৰতিখন ঘৰলৈ 100% বিশুদ্ধ সামগ্ৰী যোগান ধৰাটো পতঞ্জলি গৰুৰ ঘি কচ্চি ঘানি সৰিয়হৰ তেল মছলা কেশৰ আটা ডালি তথা চাউল আদি সকলো সামগ্ৰী পতঞ্জলিৰে ঘৰলৈ আনিব নিজৰ মৰমৰ শিশুটো আৰু পৰিয়ালক ভেজালকৰণৰ বিহৰ পৰা ৰক্ষা কৰক
গৰম গৰম ৰুটি ৰেডি এই ৰুটিনো কি এডভান্টেজ আছে আশীৰ্বাদ আটাৰে তৈয়াৰী ইয়াত 4টা এডভান্টেজ আছে আশীৰ্বাদে 6500 আৰু অধিক বাছনি কেন্দ্ৰৰ পৰা ঘেঁহু বাছি লয় 3বাৰ টন্নকৈ চাফা কৰে হাতেৰে স্পৰ্শ নকৰাকৈ স্বাস্থ্যবিধি সন্মত পেকেজিং কৰে প্ৰয়োজনীয় পৰিপুষ্টি লাভ কৰে আশীৰ্বাদ এডভান্টেজ প্ৰতিদিন
from ITC.
Who will you vote for this time in Meghalaya?
BJP, Ubak Madi.
BJP.
And why BJP?
Jasokar kami semula kita ke aero. Gila tang gitu ke high level sudah.
Nah, kuat nak baka yuk surkar nak apa ni ka Meghalaya jom ni ke. Nama raya ka. Yui baka long betul.
Stronger BJP, stronger Meghalaya.
শিশুৱে সাধাৰণতে গাখীৰ নাখায় সেয়ে ভাৰতত প্ৰথমবাৰৰ বাবে আমি গৰুৰ গাখীৰৰ পৰা প্ৰস্তুত কৰিছো পতঞ্জলি দুধ বিস্কিট আৰু সেয়াও ময়দা কোলেষ্ট্ৰল আৰু ট্ৰান্স ফেট ৰহিত পতঞ্জলি দুধ বিস্কিটৰ এটা পেকেটত আছে 1 কাপ পৰিমাণৰ গৰুৰ গাখীৰৰ স্বাস্থ্যকৰ সোৱাদ
Welcome back. Let me once again go to Professor Umdor. Professor, basically, as 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛𝗏 had said right at the beginning, political ideology. Where is the political ideology? Now, we said that only 2 parties that cannot unite is the BJP and the TMC. But yes, they cannot unite under the banner of the respective political parties, perhaps. But what if members of if they can break away from the Congress, Dr. Mukhim and overnight they have become TMC, and suddenly the TMC has become the main opposition party in the state, and anything can happen. I'm not talking about the TMC breaking up. I'm not talking about any party. I'm not suggesting anything here. I'm just saying political parties, like we have seen, we have examples in the northeast, in Arunachal Pradesh. 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗏, you know it, overnight, 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗥𝗧𝗏 from a regional party leader, he had become a national party leader, or from a national party leader, he had become a regional party leader. It's not just 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗥𝗧𝗏, it is many others. We have seen that happen. Now, so is it fair for political pundits, or is it too simplistic for people like us to assume that so-and-so can unite, so-and-so cannot unite? What if they break up and unite?
There's something very, if you look at the politics in Meghalaya, many strange things have happened. We have had an independent candidate being the chief minister of the state. So anything can happen. And usually, when an elected person change parties, he goes back to his constituency and says that as long as I'm able to serve the interests of the constituencies, it is acceptable to the people. So that is what, we commonly hear them giving the explanation. So ideology doesn't come into the play. But I think when you look at the larger issue that you had mentioned earlier about development, whether development issues are important or not, it's certainly very important. I work with the young people, in the university and in colleges. And for them, the utmost in their mind that they have, the concern that they have is regarding employment. We don't have employment avenues here except for the government. There's no other avenues, and most of our youth are underemployed or in disguise unemployment. So that is a big issue, and it is here that I say that no matter which power, which party or which combination comes into power. I think being a small state, we are really very small state. I always tell my students that if we were a city, we will be the 11th largest city, in the country. We are such a small state that we need to come together and maybe arrive at what I say, the common minimum understanding, that that we need to come together in a state and say that, listen, there are issues that we need to resolve, and we need to, the political parties, pressure group, and the local bodies have to come together. You have the issue of border issues. We have infrastructure issues. Big project issues are being stuck in the state because we don't have a common understanding, minimum understanding on these issues.
Right. Now, Ongpat, in this election, we have seen in the last few weeks that the Trinamool Congress, led by Dr. Mukhim Sangma, has been the most aggressive. They said that if we come to power, we will scrap that border deal with Assam. They have accused Conrad Sangma of being a racist and an uncivilized man. That is the word he used. And when I spoke to the Conrad Sangma for his reaction, he said that, this is very unfortunate, but it's fine. So the TMC is emerging as a most aggressive political party. Now, we have not seen this kind of an attack, despite differences of calling a leader of another party a racist, quote unquote, and uncivilized. But it is true. Dr. Mukhim Sangma said this on our channel. So, are you surprised that politics is reaching different levels in a small state like Meghalaya?
Yeah, I think political decency is dead, and it's become a very personal fight also between these two gentlemen, Mukhim Sangma and Conrad Sangma. I remember at one time saying these two are two of the most intelligent and capable people, and how I wish these two could work together, but that seems to be an impossibility because of I don't know whether it's ideology or any other.
Ongpat, on a lighter note, would you like to try to see that these two work together?
Of course, if they can work together for the larger benefit of the state, but then again, they are both prisoners of dynasty, so I don't know how that's going to work.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And I also want to bring to your notice that it's something you have forgotten, Wasbir. What about the women candidates here? Yeah? Only 37 out of 379 candidates in the fray. And this is matrilineal Meghalaya. When will women really come into politics? And if they do come into politics, will they bring a difference?
So what do you think? What do you think? Are there dirt up women candidates, or do you think the political parties are not giving them tickets?
See, elections have become a very, very masculine, patriarchal kind of activity where money, muscle, everything is involved. And women generally don't perhaps want to tread there. And there are issues in Meghalaya today which none of the political parties seem to touch. And I want to tell you one thing, Wasbir. Most of these aspirant MLAs are all urban based. Yeah, they don't go and they don't see the poverty in rural Meghalaya. We are 32.7% poor, BPL families. They live hand-to-mouth existence. Today, Rudi and I had gone to a village, and we find kids of 10 to 12 years already dropped out of school. Their parents can't afford to put them in primary school or even upper primary because they have to send them to look after the cows and sheep. Every second kid you speak to is out of school. Can you imagine the situation? And in this regime, the 5-year regime, actually education, primary education is completely broken. But Meghalaya is also a state that is very, very poor on statistics. If you do not have data, how do you make interventions?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, coming to you, Mr. Warjri, you are a man who has traveled the world. You have been a most respected diplomat. You have been ambassador in several countries. You were in Sri Lanka at a very critical time. And you held several assignments in the Ministry of External Affairs, both at home, that is in New Delhi. Now, my question to you: what worries you the most? What bothers you the most about what you see in Meghalaya today? Suppose it's a hypothetical question I'm asking you just to bring out your response. Suppose you would be the chief minister, what would be your highest priority?
I'm not able to really, in fact, I would have loved to hear 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛𝗏 and Professor Umdor also properly, and even your question, but I'll try and make sense of what you asked me. I hope I'm clear enough to you.
Yes, you're clear, very clear.
The way I look at Meghalaya, in fact, the way I look at Meghalaya, I asked myself, recently they celebrated the 50 years of Meghalaya. And there is nowhere in the government publication or wherever it is, which talks about what has happened in the last 50 years. That's number one. Number two, so now if you have to talk about the last, something is not said about what about the future for the next 50 years, because when we talk about what the youth are looking for, we have to talk about the future, what is applicable to them. So we are not addressing that at all. And another thing is about Meghalaya is that all through, if we talk about lack of, whether it's in health, in education, in many other sectors, it goes back to lack of resources, depending largely 80% on the center for resources. So what is the need? The need is basically something which will generate resource for Meghalaya itself. And that is, in the last 50 years, has there been any economic reforms of any kind here? No. And unless that question, that issue is addressed, some reforms, for instance, any prosperous country, whether it is United States or which I have worked there, or I have worked in communist countries before and they change, or even in China for that, the question is investment. There's no investment of any kind at all here in Meghalaya. And unless we address that, we are not going to have the kind of employment prospects for the youth here in Meghalaya. So this is, I think, to me, is a very important point at all if you are going to talk about the future of Meghalaya.
No. Yes, these are very important points. These are very important points which Mr. Rudi Warjri has mentioned. But Mr. Umdor, Professor Umdor, basically what we have seen is that the political parties are not specifying. They're talking about development, all right, but they're not giving a vision. There is no roadmap that they're showing. Now, what about nobody is talking about the issues. Where is the inner line permit issue gone? Where is the coal mining issue gone? Nobody is talking about that. Nobody is talking about investments coming in. Nobody is talking about these issues. So what do you think this time? That they may be there in the manifestos, tucked away in the pages, but nobody is talking about it. Not many people are talking about it. Let me qualify it by saying like that. Yes.
Mr. Wasbir, I just want to add to what 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗛𝗏 said, about this, about our politician lacking the, touch with the rural population. I was interacting with a senior government ministers actually, and I was, pointing to the rural distress in our state. And the answer that I got from him, very surprising, is that my officers have not informed me. So as a politician, if you're not, you're supposed to, to know your constituency, to know the, situation in your state. So if you get that sort of an answer, you can really understand the sort of divide, that is there. And because most of our ministers are urban-based, as 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗏 said, and, they are really out of touch with what is happening in the state. Coming back to what Rudi has said, about the having a vision for the development of the state. You see, again, let me, point out to some of the things that have been happening in our state. Look at the airport expansion. We've had serious issues with airport expansion because they are not getting, the cooperation, not only from the government, but from other institutions like the ADCs. So that is why I said that, as a state, we need to have a common understanding that there are certain issues that we can't play politics with. Yeah. If you look at the border issue, we have a state, this is the best time for us to serve the border, to solve the border issues, because we have a strong leadership in Assam. And if it is to be solved, I think this is the chance for us. We can't be playing, politics in this, and therefore we need to come together and sort of have this understanding. We have a highway that we are not able to complete certain stretches because again, there are political parties and there are other NGOs and pressure groups that are inciting, and that are preventing actually the completion of these projects. So these are other things. The other thing that you have said is that this is something very worrisome for me, is that instead of looking at major economic issues, we are now gone down to freebies and cash transfers. Look at our state. We are a state with a very huge revenue deficit of around 800 crores, to 2021. And my estimate is that if you look at the TMC pledges, they'll need around 2,000 crore in order to fulfill just 3 of their pledges, about transferring 1,000 rupees to women.
You mean to say
we don't have the resources for that.
You mean to say that these are some of the political parties are coming up with unrealistic promises?
Obviously, because instead of looking at capital outlays, that is where we actually need to invest on our roads, bridges, schools, hospitals. That is where we are not investing. But if you add on to that, to the the freebies that we have promised, and if we have to fulfill it, then I don't know where we'll get the resources. So either we'll have to be borrowing, or either we'll have to cut on our capital expenditure, capital outlays, which will be disastrous in the long run.
Absolutely. Let me come to you, Larsing. You are a sports organizer. You are a sports enthusiast. My question is, if such a large number of voters are youths, it's a youthful state. Now the point is, what is it that, take the case of Manipur. Let's not go into any other part of the country, or let's not go into anywhere else in the world. Now, so much of focus is given on sports. So what are some of the focus in the last 5 years, 10 years that the Meghalaya government has been giving on sports? So do you think these are not issues that bother the youth?
Yes, Wasbir. I wouldn't say that governments in Meghalaya have not been focusing on sports, because in the last 10 years, relatively speaking, because see, we're a state of 50 years, and whatever I've seen in the last 2 decades that I've been around actively in the field, is that there has been some amount of traction in the last 10 years. Now, if you compare Meghalaya to Manipur, yes, Manipur hosted the National Games way back in 1998 or 99, and at that point of time, Meghalaya was in slumber. Assam hosted the National Games in 2007.
Yeah.
But in these last 10 years, definitely right from the time of the previous government, Mukhim Sangma's government, right up to even the current, there has been a certain amount of concerted emphasis on infrastructural development, some amount of focus on sports. Obviously, most of it have not yet, realized into anything tangible. But as a state, in the last 10 years, there has been some gradual movement. I think the hosting of the National Games, which the previous government had somehow managed to get the rights to host the National Games, and this current government has been obviously struggling with infrastructure, a certain sizable amount of which has also been built and is still in the process of building. We will see certain amount of results in the next 2 to 3 years. So yes, in one way, there's a lot of work to be done in the field of sports. But on the other side, I would not want to be critical and say that nothing was done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We have to be fair to what is the situation on the ground. I don't have much time, but Kongpat, what kind of a government would you like to see? What kind of work would the new government should do for Meghalaya, according to you? Final comments.
See, Wasbir, I want to say one thing very quickly. One is that we do not yet understand the meaning of a legislator. We look at him, at an MLA, for repairing pipes and making drains, and that's not the work of a legislator. His work is to make policies. His work is to make laws. I think we need to be able to change that aspect. And secondly, about the border issue, I'd like to say that perhaps this is the first time that the border issue has been taken up at the level of chief ministers, and very seriously. So to play politics with this issue is not good. We can continue the discussions. We cannot say that this is a closed chapter. Wherever there is a kind of a dissension, the matter can be opened up again. But to say we will sort of just this whole border talks is to me very infantile. It's not good politics.
Absolutely.
And about creating jobs, we need to ask these people who come to us and who lecture, how are you going to create those jobs? Rudi Warjri spoke about investments. Investments cannot come into Meghalaya because of the Land Transfer Act, which is so rigid. Is there any MLA here who actually has, the political will or the political strength or the political backbone to even suggest that? It's like a holy cow. So, and last but not the least, I really wish we didn't have businessmen in politics. You don't need businessmen to make laws. Let them do their own businesses. Why do they also have to be in politics? This is what has destroyed Meghalaya, actually.
Okay, very, very sharp comments there from Patricia Mukhim, as always. Rudi Warjri, your final comments, what kind of work you would like to see the new government doing? What are your 3 priorities for Meghalaya? Final comments.
Okay, now, I think they should look at it that if they really want to address the problems of Meghalaya, they should be as professional as possible. Now, by that I mean that, for instance, I'll give you an example. Here in Meghalaya, even the Mukul government in the past, even the Conrad government, what they have, all sorts of high-sounding name bodies, which are basically political in nature, economic mobilization, economic council, so many of them, which do no work, nothing, even the planning board. But what they should do, I think, they should appoint an expert body which will go down to the community, let it be community bottom-up driven, and understand from there what exactly what are the problems, and then what recommendations they can give to address these problems, from investment to education to health to any other sector.
Right.
And I think after that, as Kongpat mentioned about political will, they should have the political will to suitably take the recommendations and act on it.
Absolutely.
And this is, I think, the way it should be done. But I don't know.
Professor Umdor, I'm completely running out of time. 20 seconds to you, Professor Umdor. Final comments.
I just beg to differ with Kongpat. I think we do need entrepreneurs and businessmen to come into politics because they're the one with the ideas and how to, problem solvers. But what we have right now are tenderpreneurs, people who use the position to extract government contracts. So we don't actually have businessmen. These are, tenderpreneurs. I think what we need as a state are bold ideas. We really have to, we need bold ideas to solve our issues. We don't have land reform in a state till date. Those are the issues that we need to tackle. And as I said, we need to come together, small state, and look at what we should do together to take this state forward.
Larsing, 10 seconds. Optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
No, I think hopeful because, as a country, this is the best phase that one can actually be. We are actually entering the golden era of India. We are number 5 in the world in terms of GDP. And by the time this new government finishes off, we might have even overtaken Japan to number 3. So while India races towards becoming an economic superpower, my only hope is that Meghalaya also contributes to that initiative and growth and partakes in the developmental process.
Absolutely.
For which governance will have to play a major role. And for governance to happen, we need experienced people both at the state level. And definitely being a revenue deficit state, we are dependent on Delhi. So we need to have a government that has a very strong sort of a collaborative understanding with the center. There is no other way as far as we are concerned in the economic sense, in the private sector.
Absolutely. And it is a situation in Meghalaya where there has to be a government that has to bring in development in the real sense. And if Meghalaya has to be part of the Indian growth story, or if Meghalaya has to be part of India's growth story, our Larsing said that the government at the state and at the center must work in sync. Whether that is going to happen or not, we don't know. At the end of the day, as I always say, voters are the king. and we are going to know on the 27th of February, 2 days from now, 2 to 3 days from now, when the voters are going to vote and elect the next government. As things stand now, from the discussion that we had with our esteemed panelists tonight, could be anybody's game. Anybody could have the last laugh. And of course, the 70% young voters may well hold the key. We'll wait and watch. This is not the last word that we are hearing from Meghalaya. Northeast Live will continue with its in-depth coverage of the elections in the Northeast, Meghalaya, Nagaland. We have already covered the Tripura elections. And of course, for the sake of the viewers, this episode of Northeast Tonight will be repeated at 10 p.m. tonight. And I thank all my panelists for being on the show and the viewers for watching the program. Good night and goodbye.
News to keep you ahead. Evening Prime, every day at 7 p.m.